I still remember the smell of rain that morning, the one when Amelia was born. It was the kind of gentle, lingering drizzle that coats everything in silver. I was 27, terrified and alone in a hospital room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and hope. When they placed her in my arms for the first time, I knew my world had changed forever. Her tiny fingers curled around mine like she'd been waiting for me all along. I whispered to her, "It's you and me now, my darling, always," and for the next 25 years it truly was. Raising Amelia on my own wasn't easy, not in Surrey, not with a meager nurse's salary and rent that seemed to grow faster than my paycheck. Her father, Jonathan, had left when she was 2, claiming he wasn't cut out for family life. I didn't fight it. I didn't have the energy to chase ghosts. Instead, I poured everything I had, every penny, every heartbeat, every hour of overtime into Amelia. She was my reason to get up at 5 in the morning and trudge through double shifts, my reason to smile even when I wanted to scream, my reason to keep faith when the world turned cold. Amelia was brilliant from the start, sharp as glass, beautiful as sunlight on water. She read early, spoke like an adult before she was 5, and carried herself with a confidence that made teachers adore her. "She's going to do great things," they used to tell me, and I believed them. At home, she'd sit at the kitchen table doing her homework while I prepared her favorite shepherd's pie. "Mum," she'd say, looking up with that inquisitive tilt of her head, "when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house with a garden full of roses. You'll never have to work again." I'd laugh and kiss the top of her head. "All I need is you, my love. The rest doesn't matter." But as she grew older, something began to change. It started subtly, the way she'd wrinkle her nose when I came to her school events wearing my worn-out coat, the one I'd owned for nearly a decade. Or how she'd sigh impatiently when I said I couldn't afford brand-name shoes. I thought it was just adolescence. Every girl wants to fit in. I never took it personally. Still, I noticed the divide growing between us, quiet as a shadow. She wanted more than I could give, more than I'd ever dreamed of wanting. By 16, Amelia had outgrown our modest little house in every possible way. She won scholarships, earned perfect grades, and secured a place at one of London's best universities. When she left, the silence in our home was deafening. I kept her room just as she'd left it, the posters, the perfume bottles, the little note on her mirror that said "You can do anything." She visited on holidays, of course, but each visit felt shorter, colder, more performative. She spoke of networking and opportunities, of people with names I couldn't pronounce and places I'd never seen. She looked at me like I belonged to another world, one she'd outgrown. I told myself it was fine. It's what I'd worked for, after all, to give her wings, even if it meant she'd fly away. Then something happened that I couldn't have predicted in 1,000 years. Her grandfather, my estranged father-in-law, Edward Ellis, passed away. A man I hadn't spoken to since Jonathan left. Edward was the kind of man who believed in bloodlines and proper breeding. He'd never approved of me, a nurse from a working-class family marrying into his world of estates and trust funds. He'd cut Jonathan off when he chose me, and when Jonathan left, Edward made it clear that neither I nor Amelia would ever see a penny of his fortune. But Edward, it seemed, had one final surprise. A month after his death, a thick envelope arrived for Amelia. Inside was a letter from Edward's solicitors and an official document stating she had been left the bulk of his estate, an inheritance valued at $33 million. I remember sitting across from her at our kitchen table as she read the words, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. For a moment, she looked like my little girl again, the one who dreamed of buying me roses. But then something shifted. She looked up at me with a strange, almost calculating expression. "Mum," she said softly. This changes everything. I didn't understand what she meant, not then. I only saw my daughter's excitement and felt pride swell in my chest. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered, tears in my eyes. You deserve every bit of happiness. She smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was sharper, cooler. That night, while I lay awake in bed, listening to the rain against the window, I told myself things would be fine. That no amount of money could ever change the love between a mother and her child. I had no idea that I was about to lose her not to death, but to wealth, to pride, to the kind of blindness that only fortune can bring. Because in just a few weeks, my golden child, the girl I'd given my life to, would throw me out of her world entirely. It's strange how quickly money changes the air around a person. It's not visible, not like a new car or a diamond necklace, but you can feel it. The way people look at you, speak to you, the way they wait for your approval, and I could feel it around Amelia almost immediately. After she received the inheritance, my daughter became a magnet for attention. Calls, messages, invitations from people who had never cared to know her name before. Suddenly, she was being photographed at charity galas, interviewed by lifestyle magazines, and invited to dinners where people spoke about legacy and vision. Over wine that cost more than my monthly rent. I watched it all from the sidelines, trying to be proud. She'd invite me along sometimes at first. "Mum, come see the new house," she'd say, as if she were showing me a school project. The house was a mansion in Berkshire, marble floors, chandeliers, a garden the size of a football pitch. It was beautiful, but it felt cold. Not a single thing in it carried warmth. It wasn't a home, it was a statement. She walked me through the rooms, explaining the imported furniture and designer art like a tour guide. "This piece," she said, pointing to a strange metal sculpture, "was £5,000. It's by a young artist from Paris. Everyone's talking about him." I smiled and nodded, even though the sculpture looked like a tangle of bicycle chains. "Do you like it?" she asked. "I prefer your drawings," I said softly. "Remember the one you made of the two of us in the park?" Her smile faltered. "Oh, that old thing. I threw it out ages ago." My chest tightened, but I said nothing. I told myself it was just part of her growing up, of moving on. The weeks passed, and Amelia's new life consumed her. She hired assistants, bought luxury cars, and threw parties that lasted until dawn. I'd stop by sometimes, bringing her home, cooked meals she rarely touched. Each time, I felt more out of place. Her friends looked through me, not at me. One evening, as I stood in her marble kitchen setting down a dish of lasagna, I overheard one of them whisper, "Is that her maid?" Amelia laughed and said, "No, that's just my mum. She's harmless." I froze, harmless, like I was an old pet that had wandered in from the rain. That was the first time I felt something break inside me. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself she didn't mean it, that the world she was in had swallowed her whole, and she just needed time to find her way back. But she didn't come back. She drifted further and further until I hardly recognized her. It all came to a head one bright Saturday morning. I arrived at her mansion to surprise her with breakfast. I'd baked scones, the kind she loved as a child. When I rang the doorbell, a uniformed security guard opened the gate. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said stiffly. "Miss Ellis asked that no visitors be allowed without prior notice." Visitors? I laughed, thinking he must be joking. "I'm her mother." He looked uncomfortable. "I'll have to check with her, ma'am." Minutes later, Amelia appeared at the door, wearing a silk robe and a face full of irritation. "Mum, what are you doing here?" "I brought breakfast," I said softly, holding up the basket. "You've been so busy lately, I thought." "Mum, you can't just show up like this," she interrupted. "I have meetings. I'm not 12 anymore." Her tone cut deeper than any knife. "I know that," I said quietly. "I just wanted to see you," she sighed. "Look, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but this isn't working. You keep coming around and it's distracting. I need space to live my life, to make my own decisions. I'm not trying to control you, I said, my voice trembling. I just miss you. She crossed her arms, her eyes cool and distant. Mum, maybe it's time you moved on. You've spent your whole life looking after me. Don't you want to, I don't know, find something for yourself? Her words stung because they were meant to. I had something for myself, I whispered. You. She looked away. Please, Mum, I think you should go. I stood there in the driveway, the morning sun glaring in my eyes, my heart cracking open. I wanted to scream, to tell her that no fortune in the world could ever replace love. But the words wouldn't come. I just nodded and turned away. As I walked down the long, polished driveway, I heard the gate close behind me, a sound that felt final, like the ending of a life I'd spent decades building. That night, I sat in my small flat, staring at the basket of untouched scones. The butter had melted, the jam had leaked, and all I could think about was how she used to sit at our old kitchen table, laughing, flour on her nose. It was all gone now, my little girl, my purpose, my home, and yet, even through the heartbreak, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Because no matter how cruelly she'd treated me, she was still my daughter, my golden child. I told myself I'd wait. That someday she'd remember who she was, but life has a way of humbling even the proudest hearts. And it wouldn't take long, just 3 days before the phone rang, and Amelia's voice on the other end would tremble the way it did when she was a little girl. 3 days. That's all it took for her empire to begin to crumble. The first morning after Amelia threw me out, I woke to a strange stillness. For 25 years, my mornings had been filled with her, the sound of her laughter echoing down the hallway, her voice calling, "Mum, where's my hairbrush?" the clatter of toast as she rushed to school or work. But now there was nothing, just the hum of my old refrigerator and the tick of the clock on the wall, each second reminding me that I was no longer needed. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, staring at a cup of tea that had gone cold, wondering if this was what the rest of my life would feel like, quiet and empty. I tried to distract myself, but everything seemed hollow. Even the television couldn't drown out the echo of her voice in my head. By the second day, I told myself I had to stop thinking about her. She was an adult, and adults make choices, even foolish, painful ones. I went for a walk around the park, trying to enjoy the crisp autumn air. Children were running through piles of golden leaves, their mothers calling after them with laughter. I had to turn away. It hurt too much to watch. I thought about writing Amelia a letter, not to scold her, but to remind her that I still loved her, that no argument could ever change that. But something inside me said to wait. If she needed me, she would come. She always had, eventually. Then came the third day, the day everything began to unravel. It was evening, and I'd just finished folding laundry when my phone rang. The number flashing on the screen was unfamiliar, but something in my chest stirred, a mother's instinct, that strange, unbreakable thread that binds you to your child even across silence. I answered softly, "Hello." For a moment, there was only breathing. Then, a small, broken voice whispered, "Mum." I froze. Amelia, her voice cracked, raw with panic. "Mum, please, please, I need you." I gripped the phone tighter. "What's happened?" There was a long pause, filled with trembling breaths and muffled sobs. Then words came tumbling out, disjointed, frantic. "He stole from me, Mum. All of it. The money, it's gone. I didn't know who else to call. I sank into a chair, heart pounding." "Slow down, love. Who stole from you?" "My advisor, Daniel, the one I told you about. He said he could help me invest. I trusted him. He took everything. All the accounts are frozen. The police said." She broke off with a choked sob. "And the papers. Oh God, Mum. They're saying horrible things about me. That I'm stupid, careless, spoiled." Her voice cracked again. "I don't know what to do. I can't stop shaking. Please come. For a moment I couldn't breathe. It felt as though the universe had shifted, as though all the pride, all the arrogance that had stood between us had finally shattered into dust. But there was no satisfaction in it, only sadness. "Where are you?" I asked quietly. "At home," she whispered. "Please, Mum, I need you." I didn't hesitate. I threw on my coat and ran out into the night. The sky was heavy with rain as I made my way to her mansion. When I arrived, the gates stood open, an eerie sight after being shut in my face just days before. The house looked different too, darker. The bright lights that once glittered through its windows were gone. Only one faint glow came from the sitting room. I walked inside and found her curled up on the sofa, her makeup streaked down her face, her designer dress rumpled. She looked small, like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed after a nightmare. "Mum," she whispered, her voice breaking. I messed everything up. I sat beside her and gathered her into my arms. For the first time in years, she didn't resist. She clung to me, trembling. "Oh, my darling," I murmured, stroking her hair. "Money can vanish, houses can burn down, but love doesn't go away. Not unless you let it." She sobbed harder, her tears soaking through my jumper. "I thought I was so clever," she said between sobs. "Everyone told me I could do anything. I didn't want to be ordinary like you." Her words stung, but I held her tighter. "You wanted to be more," I said softly, "but you forgot that the more you rise, the easier it is to fall if you've no one to catch you." She nodded weakly. "I didn't deserve you. No," I whispered, "but you still have me. That's what matters." We sat there for hours, mother and daughter, surrounded by silence, both stripped of pride. I made her tea, tucked a blanket around her, and watched her fall asleep like she hadn't in years, her head resting on my lap. As I stroked her hair, I thought of the irony how, in chasing a life of power and luxury, she'd ended up right where she started, in her mother's arms, looking for safety. It would be easy to say I felt vindicated, that her downfall was my revenge, but the truth was, I only felt tired. Tired and heartbroken, because forgiveness isn't a switch you flick. It's a quiet decision you make again and again, even while your wounds are still bleeding. That night, as rain pattered against the windows, I promised myself I'd help her, but I wouldn't let her break me again. If Amelia wanted to rebuild her life, she'd have to do it differently this time. She'd have to learn what Val you really meant, not the kind written on checks, but the kind you carry inside. And when she woke the next morning, she'd find a mother who was still there, not as a servant, not as a shadow, but as a woman strong enough to love her child and still walk her own path. Little did I know, those days of rebuilding would bring the sweetest form of revenge, not in words or punishment, but in the quiet strength that comes from forgiveness. I woke before dawn that morning, the pale light spilling through the silk curtains of Amelia's grand sitting room. She was still asleep on the sofa, her face soft and unguarded, just as it had been when she was little. I sat quietly beside her, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest, and thought about how fragile life's balance truly is, how quickly fortune can turn into punishment. When she finally stirred, her eyes were swollen and red. For the first time in years, she didn't try to hide her vulnerability. She looked up at me, her voice hoarse. "Mum, I don't know how to fix this." I took her hand gently. "Then we'll fix it together, one step at a time." She broke down again, whispering through tears, "I don't deserve your help." I smiled faintly. "You don't have to. You're my daughter. That's reason enough." For the next few days, I stayed in that cold, echoing mansion, cooking for her, tidying up, helping her make sense of the chaos that her life had become. There were reporters outside the gates, stories splashed across the tabloids, millionaire heiress duped by lover advisor and from riches to ruin, the fall of Amelia Ellis. Her so-called friend vanished faster than champagne bubbles. Not one of them answered her calls. I watched the realization dawn in her eyes that the world she'd fought so hard to join was built on sand. On the second night, she found me in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes. "Mum," she said softly, "I don't know how you do it, how you stay calm. I'd be falling apart." I chuckled quietly. "Oh, I have fallen apart many times, love. The trick is learning how to put yourself back together." She leaned against the counter, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've always been stronger than me." I shook my head. "No, Amelia, I've just had more practice." We both smiled then, a small, hesitant smile, but it was the first real one we'd shared in years. As the weeks went by, Amelia began to face her mistakes. We went to the police together, met with lawyers, and filed the reports. She sold the mansion and moved into a modest flat not far from mine. The first day she handed me the keys, she said, "I don't want to live in a palace anymore. I just want to live somewhere that feels like home." It was a small, humble place, 2 bedrooms, creaky floorboards, and a little balcony overlooking a row of chestnut trees. She decorated it herself, simply and beautifully. I noticed something remarkable as I helped her unpack. Gone were the designer labels and glittering trinkets. In their place were family photos, books, and, to my quiet joy, a framed copy of that old drawing she once threw away, the one of the 2 of us sitting in the park. She had found it torn and faded in one of my old boxes. She'd mended it with tape and tears. "Do you remember this, Mum?" she asked, holding it up. I smiled, my throat tightening. I never forgot it. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Neither did I suppose. I just pretended I did." Months passed, and little by little, Amelia began rebuilding her life, not with millions, but with meaning. She took a job at a charity foundation helping disadvantaged women find employment. "I want to do something that matters," she told me one evening. Something real, and for the first time, I saw her glow again, not with vanity, but with purpose. Our relationship, though mended, carried scars. There were moments when the silence between us would stretch long, when memories of her cruelty would flicker in my mind. But forgiveness is a slow bloom. It doesn't burst open overnight. It unfolds, petal by petal, with patience. One evening, about 6 months after everything had fallen apart, we went for a walk along the Thames. The city lights shimmered on the water, and Amelia linked her arm through mine like she used to when she was a child. "Mum," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why didn't you hate me after everything I did?" I looked at her, at that face I had loved since the first moment I saw it. "Because hate is heavy, darling. It only ever hurts the person carrying it. I didn't want to give you that much power over my heart." She stopped walking and turned to me, her eyes shining. "You're an incredible woman, Mum. I wish I'd realized it sooner." I smiled gently. "We all learn in our own time." She squeezed my hand. "I don't deserve a second chance. None of us do," I said. "But we all get one, if we're lucky." As the months turned into a year, Amelia began speaking at charity events, not as a fallen heiress, but as a woman who had been broken and rebuilt. She told her story honestly, how greed and pride had cost her the one thing money could never buy: love. People listened, they cried, some even thanked her for giving them courage to face their own mistakes. And me, I sat in the back of those rooms quietly proud, watching my daughter, not the millionaire, not the celebrity, but the woman she was always meant to be. Sometimes, when we'd have tea together, she'd say, "Mum, you got your revenge after all." I'd raise an eyebrow and smile. "Oh, and what's that? You forgave me, and now I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it." That was the sweetest revenge I could ever imagine, not gloating, not bitterness, but the quiet victory of love, outlasting everything that tried to destroy it. Now, when I look back on it all, the pain, the distance, the nights of tears, I see something beautiful underneath it: growth. My daughter learned humility. I learned strength. And together, We built something far stronger than fortune. Sometimes I still visit the old house, now sold to strangers. I stand by the gates and remember the day she closed them on me, and how, 3 days later, those same gates swung open again, not just to her home, but to her heart. People often ask me if I've forgiven her completely. The truth is, forgiveness isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every morning when you open your eyes. And every day I choose it again, because in the end, my greatest treasure wasn't the money she lost. It was the daughter I got back. Epilogue. Sometimes when we sit together on her little balcony, drinking tea as the sun sets, Amelia reaches over and takes my hand. "Do you ever wish things had been different, Mum?" she asks. I smile. "No, darling. Everything happened exactly as it was meant to. You needed to lose everything to find yourself, and I needed to lose you for a little while to understand just how strong a mother love can be." And with that, she lays her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, the world feels whole again. Because true revenge isn't cruel, it's calm, it's kind, it's living well, and loving even better.